Everyone in Israel is celebrating Nvidia, and I understand why. Nvidia means prestige. Nvidia means high salaries. Nvidia means AI, global investment, and thousands of quality jobs. But there is one question almost nobody wants to ask. What if, as things stand, the Nvidia story is costing Israel more than it is bringing in? Not because Nvidia is bad. Nvidia is excellent. But because the government is telling only half the story. The shekel has become extremely strong against the dollar. Recently, we have been around 3 shekels to the dollar. That sounds good if you are buying imported goods or planning a holiday. But for exporters, tourism, foreign buyers, and dollar earners, it is a serious blow. And Nvidia, together with the broader high-tech investment story, is a major part of the narrative pushing Israel into this strong shekel economy. So let's stop speaking in slogans. Let's do a rough national balance sheet. High-tech exports are about $85 billion. When the exchange rate moves from around 3.70 to around 3.03, that is about 67 agarot less for every export dollar. That creates a gross pressure of roughly 57 billion shekels on high-tech exports. That is before we even talk about regular Israeli exporters. Non-high-tech exports are another roughly $60 billion. Same calculation. That is about another 40 billion shekels of gross pressure on Israeli exporters. Factories, agriculture, medical devices, industrial companies, services that compete internationally. These are not glamorous LinkedIn stories, but they are real jobs. Now add tourism. Tourism was damaged badly by the war, of course. But when tourists eventually come back, Israel is now even more expensive. A strong shekel means hotels, restaurants, guides, buses, and events all become more expensive in dollar terms. That can easily mean another 2 to 5 billion shekels of annual damage to tourism recovery. Now, real estate. A 4 million shekel apartment used to cost about $1.08 million at 3.70. At 3.03, it costs about $1.32 million. Same apartment, same walls. But over 20% more expensive for the foreign buyer or dollar earner. That damages foreign buyer demand, mortgage capacity, purchase tax, and brokerage, legal fees, renovations, furniture, and the whole ecosystem around those deals. Put a cautious value on that, another 2 to 8 billion shekels of economic drag. Then comes the quiet damage, jobs, not always dramatic layoffs, sometimes worse. The next team is simply hired abroad. The next R&D group goes to Eastern Europe. The next support center goes to India. The next factory expansion does not happen. If only 20,000 to 40,000 jobs are not created in Israel or gradually move overseas, the output risk is easily 10 to 25 billion shekels. So let's add it up. High-tech export pressure, 57 billion. Non-tech export pressure, 40 billion. Tourism, 2 to 5 billion. Real estate and dollar earner damage, 2 to 8 billion. Jobs and offshoring risk, 10 to 25 billion. That is over 110 billion shekels of gross economic pressure. Now, to be fair, not all of that becomes real net loss. Some companies hedge, some imports become cheaper, inflation comes down, interest rates may fall. So let's be conservative. Cut it down. Even then, the net national damage could easily be 45 to 75 billion shekels a year. Now compare that to Nvidia. Nvidia is a huge win. Let's be generous. Say Nvidia contributes up to 20 billion shekels a year in Israeli value, salaries, taxes, and prestige. That is a big number, but it is still smaller than the possible national cost of an overvalued shekel. So the real question is not, is Nvidia good for Israel? Of course it is. The real question is the Nvidia celebration hiding the cost to the rest of the economy? This is where the populism comes in. Politicians love ribbon cuttings. They love saying, look, Nvidia chose Israel, but they do not stand next to the exporter whose margins disappeared. They do not stand next to the hotel owner who cannot compete, or the foreign buyer who can no longer afford an Israeli home. They do not stand next to the company that quietly moved its next 30 jobs abroad. So here is the uncomfortable conclusion. Nvidia may be good, but the Nvidia-driven strong shekel economy may not be good for Israel. If one superstar company helps push the currency to a level that damages exports, tourism, and real estate, then we need a serious national discussion. Not slogans, not press releases, not startup nation branding, a real balance sheet. Because if Israel gains 20 billion from Nvidia, but loses 50 billion across the wider economy, that is not a national success story. That is an expensive headline. Nvidia may be scoring goals for Israel's image, but if the strong shekel is costing the rest of the economy more than Nvidia brings in, then the scoreboard is not as good as the government wants us to believe.